SME incubation and financing at Seed. I've been with Seed now. It's been 8 years, 8 years last week. Holy smokes. Um, and welcome to the final installment of our Small Business Week presentations. You're going to spend the next, I don't know, 45 minutes-ish with me, and we're going to talk about successful businesses. I had the other title there too. Who can tell me what's the first step in making a business successful? Putting everybody on the spot. Anyone know? Step one of making it successful? You can put it in the chat.
Know your customer.
Know your customer. And I mean, that was kind of cheating because you saw the original title. So, yeah, but no, it absolutely is who's your customer? And that's something I preach to all of my clients on a regular basis. Who is your customer? And I get lots of answers in response, but I went, no, go deeper than that. You need to know your customer on an intimate level. Daily life basis is pretty much what you're going to be looking at for the level of knowing your customer. Because we always hope for this. However, quite often, we end up here. And it's quite okay to have a Mr. Bean as long as you discover it really, really early. And if you don't know your customer, you won't discover it really, really early, is the problem. Who can answer this question? Why do businesses fail? And it is a very loaded question. Anyone? I need Jeopardy music.
Don't think of all the factors that could impact it, positive and negative.
And there's a whole lot, Denise. Like there's a whole lot to think about, right? Like there truly, truly is. And I guess in a good way, all of those can be summed up in a couple of ways. The biggest way is there's poor market fit. And of course, 42% of those businesses that start up, the ones that fail, 42% of them fail because the customers don't even want the product or service the business is offering. I would argue the entrepreneur doesn't know their customer. And because they don't know their customer, their business model is broken. Any business and business plan that's created on a flawed model will fail. And the first step of figuring that model out is understanding who your customer is. Lots of folks think it starts with their idea. And I hear quite often people say to me, I've got a great idea. My response is, says who? Who thinks it's a great idea? And I've actually had people go, my mom thinks it's a great idea. And I said, good for your mom. Of course she does. Of course mom thinks it's a great idea. All your family and friends think your idea is great. The problem is they don't matter. Not that they don't matter, but as far as your business is concerned, they don't matter. Your customers matter. And more importantly, the problem you solve for those customers is what matters. Your idea means nothing. I actually had a client ask me, what do you think of my idea? And I said to them, it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what you think. I said, your idea doesn't matter. And they're like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? And I said, do you understand the problem that you're solving for your customer? And we got into a deeper conversation about that. And then I asked, do you even know who your customer is? And they start naming off the demographics. I said, no, it's got to go deeper than that. A day in the life of this person is what's important. You have to walk a mile in your customer's shoes before you can ever see this problem that you're solving for them from their perspective. You have to walk a mile in their shoes and understand how they interact on a daily basis with this problem that you're trying to solve for them. Because remember, 42% of the businesses that fail do so because the products and services they offer, the customers they say they have don't even care what they're offering, which means they don't understand the problem from those customers' perspectives. If you don't understand the problem, you don't understand the value that you potentially provide to them. And your customers are only going to purchase from you if they see value. So the value proposition is exactly what it sounds like. The value you're proposing to offer your customers for money. It's the essence, the core of what differentiates you, what separates you from all your other competitors, everybody else who's trying to provide a solution for that particular problem. It literally explains the value that you're proposing to provide to your customers in exchange for their hard-earned cash, and clearly articulates why you, why us, that differentiating factor. Because if you're going to offer the exact same thing that somebody else is going to offer and they're already in the market, chances are the customer is going to stick with the devil they know versus the devil they don't know. That'd be you. So you have to separate yourself, differentiate yourself from that competitor. And the only way to do that is to understand the customer, understand their view of the problem, understand what they like and don't like about all those existing solutions that are out there, and provide them with a solution that's different. And that difference in your customer's eyes has to be better than the existing solution. And you can never get there unless you fully understand who this person is. Your solution has to fit with your customer's version of the problem. Now, this diagram you see here in front of you, we call this the value proposition canvas. The square on the left, that's you. That's all the bundle of benefit that you're going to provide to your customer. The circle on the right, that's step one. That's what we're going to focus today. It's about understanding who this person is. You're going to create a persona of who your ideal customer is. I always tell folks, go find a picture of who you think that perfect customer is and tell their story. It's all about the demographics, the behaviors, the motivations, their challenges, their goals, what they're trying to achieve. Who are they? Where are they from? Where do they go to school? Where do they live? What kind of house do they live in? Do they have a significant other? Are they married? Do they have kids? Do they have pets? What kind of car do they drive? What do they do for fun? A client asked me one time, why do I need to find all this information? And I said, you're solving a problem for this person. They go, I get that. So I said, you need to know where the problem fits in their daily life. You need to know how important finding a solution for that person is. You, as the entrepreneur, need it to be important. And if you don't know how it interacts with their daily life, you'll never find that out. If you are providing a service, here's a prime example. You're providing a service. Who's a service provider? We plan to be a service. Okay, Jody's a service provider. Denise is a service provider. Awesome. Anyone else? Lori is because she turned her camera back on and put her hand up. Awesome. Okay, so you're providing a service to your customers. You need their time, right? Okay, so if you didn't know that your customer was married and or had a significant other and two kids, 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, the 8-year-old is an aspiring ballerina, the 10-year-old wants to be the next Nathan McKinnon. You didn't know that you were competing against dance recital and hockey practice for your customer's time. You better have one heck of a solution, Lori, to one heck of a problem if that's what you're competing against. It's not even about the others who are competing for that same amount of time. Other businesses, I mean, other service providers. This is you're competing against their daily life because there are only so many hours in the day. It would also be beneficial for you to know that maybe your customer commutes to work on a daily basis. So they leave early in the morning, they've got an hour drive in and an hour drive home. And if there's an accident on the 102 or on one of the parkways, or that drive home is even longer, delays their day. And if you're relying on your customer's free time after the workday, you've got to know what happens in their daily life. You've got to know what you're competing against. You have to know what their motivation is. Even before you start talking about your fantastic solution because mom said, right? When you understand your customer at that level, you win. Or the likelihood of winning goes up exponentially. Because when you understand them at that level, you understand how they interact with the problem. You understand how important finding a solution is. You understand what matters to them, what they value. So then in your message, you can clearly pinpoint and articulate the precise value that you provide to them. When they have that kind of information, who do you think they're going to go to? Even if they're comparing you against their existing solution, which they may or may not like. But you've talked to a whole bunch of folks who represent this customer, and you know there's this they don't like, there's that they don't like, there's something else they don't like, and you've modified your solution to address those particular issues and challenges. You've differentiated yourselves from their existing solution and you've made it better. Where do you think they're going to look? At least give you a shot, right? And that's all you're looking for. You're looking for a shot. You're looking for a try. Try me. If they have no motivation to move beyond their existing solution, they're not gonna. You're going to show them something that's different. You say you're different. You don't get to say you're better. You say you're different. To them, it's better. And you cannot get there unless you have an idea of what their daily life looks like. So when you're creating this persona, what this person is all about, here's a prime example. Show a picture. We've got Sarah. She's 34. She's a busy working mom. She really values convenience and healthy options. She struggles to find quick, nutritious meals for her family. She usually shops online because it's quicker. But she wants brands that saves her time and makes her feel like a good parent. There's a lot in those couple of statements, right? There's a lot that tells you what Sarah is all about, what she values, what her motivations are, and what she's trying to accomplish. If you can provide Sarah with a solution that does that, at the very least, you've got Sarah's attention. If you don't provide that, you're just part of the noise. You're a drop in the ocean. And she won't even pay attention to you. So do you see how what Sarah is all about? Not Sarah here, Sarah Delaney, but maybe. What Sarah on here is all about. Do you see what understanding what her life looks like, how that potentially helps you as an entrepreneur to create a solution that's attractive to Sarah, right? It's important because you need that level of understanding. It helps you design that solution that customers do want and do need. Back to the first slide, 42% of the business failures happen because the entrepreneur creates a solution the customer doesn't even really want. The entrepreneur thinks it's a great idea. Their mom thinks it's a great idea. The customer doesn't. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to do that level of work. Time and effort, lots of entrepreneurs don't want to put in. So when you put that in, that gives you the leg up and you fully understand the customer. You're not fumbling around in the dark. You're not part of the 42% of businesses that fail because they don't know their customer. You're able to create messaging, all of your marketing that resonates with that customer. They're like, Denise, you know me. You know exactly what my problem is. You know exactly how I feel about it. It's almost like you've got a camera in my house somewhere. Right away, when they feel that with you, Denise, they're starting to trust you, right? You need folks to trust you. Dave, if they don't trust you, they're not going to pay you. It's as simple as that. So you need to build that trust early on. The easiest way to do that is know them on a daily basis and provide them with a message that truly resonates with them. Not only are you providing that solution that resonates, by knowing this person on that level, you understand the channels that they use to get their information. If I had $1 for every time someone answered the question, how are you going to market to your customer? And they answer with, I'm going to use free Facebook ads. Jody snickered. And they're serious when they say that. I'm going to use free Facebook ads. And I go, okay, I'm not dissing Facebook, but do your customers use Facebook? Well, I use Facebook a lot and I really like it. I said, that's not what I asked you. Do your customers use Facebook? I think so. I didn't ask you if you thought you knew your customers use Facebook. I asked you, do they use Facebook? And they couldn't answer that question. And then I even loaded it on further. I said, it's not that they do if they do. Why do they use Facebook? When do they use Facebook? How long is each session? How much time goes by between sessions? These are the kinds of information that allows you to get ahead in the crowded entrepreneurial space, folks. So it's not just that your customers use a particular channel to communicate. You have to know their motivation and why and how and for how long and how far in between. Not to mention the fact that chances are, if you're targeting someone under the age of 40, Facebook is not their prime channel to use. If they're using Facebook, it's to communicate with mom or grandma. That's why they use Facebook. Right, Joe? Right? Anyone under 40, what are you talking? Instagram, TikTok, right? Oh, but I don't know how to use those. Well, you know what? You better learn because that's what your customer uses. They're not going to learn to use a different channel, a different platform because that's where you are. One, they don't know that you're there. Two, they don't want to take the time or effort to be there. There's a reason why they're not on Facebook because mom and grandma are on Facebook. That's why they're not on Facebook. But see, if you didn't know that day in the life of your customer, you wouldn't have known that. And you'd toddle off and use the channels that you like, that you're familiar and comfortable with. Your comfort level just got a little tighter. Going to squirm a little bit more, right? You're going to go into the land of ambiguity, the land of fog, the land of, oh my gosh, I don't know. And that's fine. But if you don't cater to your customer, you're not going to be in business very long, if at all. You need to build empathy with your customers. This is what we call an empathy map. And I always get my clients to start here, understanding who this person is, understanding who they are, understanding what they're trying to achieve when they're trying to solve this problem, right? Because they have a problem. You aren't providing products and services, you're providing solutions to people's problems. Solutions that are so important that they're willing to pay for them. You need to understand what they hear and see in the marketplace, where they get their information from. Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Do they read the Wall Street Journal? Do they watch CNN? Is grandma chirping in their ear? Is it their favorite sports hero? Where does their information come from? What's going on in your industry in front of your customers' eyes? You need to know how much information they are aware of. You need to understand what they're saying about having the problem and experiencing trying to find a solution and what they've said about the solutions that they've engaged with. You need to understand how they behave when they have the problem. Do they wait before engaging with the solution? And if they do, how much time goes by before the first time they experience it till they actually hit a threshold where they have to have that solution? The first time you hear a squeak in your car, do you go right to the garage and pay $100, $120 for the mechanic to take a look at it? Probably not, right? You turn the radio up, roll the window down, you do something to make that squeak go away. If it stays for longer or if it gets louder, then you think about making an appointment to go to the garage. So it's important for you to understand your customer's behavior. How often do they experience the problem? How important is finding the solution at what level? What is their threshold for going, I got to pay out money to get this thing fixed? And if you don't know a day in the life of, you don't know what they're spending their money on. You don't know what's priority in their lives. Maybe getting the car fixed is pretty important. Maybe feeding the kids is even more important. Or taking the dog for a walk, or taking the dog to the vet, whatever that is. You need to understand them. So those 7 boxes, and there are 7. Yeah, there are 7 sections here. 1, who. 2, what are they trying to accomplish? 3, what do they see? 4, what are they saying? 5, what are they doing? 6, what are they hearing? And 7, what are they thinking and feeling? What pain are they experiencing? Pain is anything negative they're experiencing while having the problem, searching for a solution, and even engaging with the solution. Gains are positive outcomes. Pain is negative outcome. Gain is positive outcome. What are they looking to achieve by solving the problem? So the who, that's all about the customer persona, who this person is. What they're trying to accomplish is the problem and the various jobs they're trying to get done while having that problem. There are functional jobs, there are social jobs, and there are emotional jobs. And when I ask people, what problem are you solving? They hit the function really, really easily. I had a client, she was going to do a mobile hair salon. And when I talked to her about who her customer is, she thought she was really smart. And she said, I'm going to focus on older folks with mobility issues because they don't get out of their homes very much and they don't get their hair done and stuff. And I'm going to take the solution right to them. I said, okay, smarty pants, what problem are you solving for them? And she says, Paul, that's obvious. Oh, cool. Tell me. They want their hair cut. And I went, that ain't it. Yes, it is. No. No, it's not. Know this person. Older people with mobility issues, right? She says, yep. I said, okay. So do you talk to your customers? She says, I'm a hairdresser from Cape Breton. What do you think? And I said, okay. What do they talk about? Well, she says, they might have been at bingo on the weekend. Okay. Or maybe they were on a vacation recently. All right. Maybe they're talking with their grandkids. Cool. I said, like all human beings, they want to tell their story. Everyone wants to tell their story. You are the vehicle to have them tell their story to another person. They don't get out very often. Right. They don't have very much support. Right. You're it. Wow, she says. Okay. And I said, how do they feel when you're done? And she goes, like $1 million. And I went, right? I said, you're selling that. You know what you're selling? You're selling, hey, Mildred, you don't look like you're 92. That's what you're selling. The haircut is just how you get there. We can get you a copy, Lori. And you can actually Google that if you wanted to. You Google customer empathy map, and that'll probably come up.
Good Lord, I'd probably find 30 and then have to make a decision.
We can get it to you, don't worry. But I said, you're selling that. It's that feeling, right? The self-confidence. I said, I'll go one deeper. I said, you're selling guilt relief. Selling what? You're selling guilt relief. She said, Paul. And I told her my story. I'm with customers. And I said, only child born and raised in Corner Brook, Newfoundland. My dad built my house with his own two hands in 1965. He passed away in 1996 of cancer. My mom's 86. She still lives in that house. She'll come out of there in a box. One of my earliest memories ever, probably 3, maybe 4. Handful of quarters in the basement of the Millbrook Mall in downtown Corner Brook on a rocking horse while my mom was in the hair salon right there, getting her hair done on Saturday morning. Loves having her hair done, still does. If I knew I could pay somebody to go in there and check up on her because she doesn't drive anymore, make her feel like $1 million and listen to her story, folks, not only would I pay for it, I'd probably pay double. Guilt relief. Know your customer. Because you wouldn't have got any of that unless you've had the conversations, unless I told you my story and you heard that story from other folks over and over and over again. You're like, holy cow, that's an entirely different market that I never even thought about. Right. That's my point. Know who your customer is because you will find out stuff from them that you never would have imagined. Stuff that gives you an absolute leg up on your competitors. Why? Because you took the time to talk to me. You took the time to talk to my mom to fully understand what our motivations are. Knowledge is power, gang. Always remember that. And getting real knowledge, yeah, that takes time and effort, right? And even in this day of AI and Google and everything else, you can't beat the power of conversation. Know who they are here, not statistically. Know who they really are. And you'll be able to provide empathy. Now, why does that matter? If you haven't figured it out, my big thing is know who the hell your customer is because it is the driving force of every other thing you will do in trying to establish or grow your business. The empathy map over on the far right. It feeds directly into the value proposition canvas, which I introduced you guys to earlier. which then directly feeds into the business model creation. Remember, I said any business plan written on a broken model will fail. Having a great idea, writing a business plan, and execute, that's the worst thing in the world you could possibly do if it's built on a broken model. We get you to figure out what the model looks like first, and you have to start with know who the heck your customer is. Now, what do you think step 2 is, gang? This is a bit of a spoiler alert. Because remember, I said this presentation was all about step 1, right? Yeah, I'm not going to give it up. So step 2, give us a call. Have a conversation. Let's have a chat. We'll talk about what your idea is. We'll talk about what you think. Then check out our incubator program. Incubator is all about creating the model before you ever write a plan. I've given you step 1. We go into it in more detail in Incubator. But if you want to have that conversation, sign up for a 30-minute discovery call. We can chat for half an hour. Anybody have a question? Go for it, Lori.
I do. So I'm doing the incubator program right now. It's fantastic.